All right, we're going to dive into the costs form now. Now that you know a little bit about how to develop your narrative, the planning, the training for HMEP, and if it's EMPG, your exercise organization, equipment, other work plans, they all operate the same way. Now it's time to put energy into developing the cost form. The cost form looks like this when you first click on it. For EMPG, I want you to not do anything in this section until you have opened up the number 817 budget worksheet. You're going to need that. For those of you that used to do this in Iowa grants, you had to do a spending plan. There's nowhere for you to put together a spending plan in the system, so it's a separate attachment, and you have to do this budget worksheet Excel sheet before you can dive in and develop the cost form. So I can't stress that enough. You want to open up the budget worksheet and fill that out before you tackle the cost form. It will make it easier in the long run, I do promise. So once you open this up, I've opened up an example one, just so you get an idea. Instructions are on the first tab. Then you'll see there's a budget worksheet tab. This is where you're going to put your project title, the project name. This budget total is going to auto-calculate based on what you put in these sections. Okay, so it's broken down into the work activity areas also. You have planning, and under planning, you have personnel, travel, supplies, contractual, other. So for an example, you might have the coordinator and what percentage of their time is going to be dedicated towards the planning effort. And how do you know what the planning effort is? You just spent time creating the objectives and the activities that you're going to charge your time towards doing. If you have multiple people in your office that will be charging time towards the planning effort, they need to each be listed here. This is our only spot to collect who's going to be EMPG funded or their salaries used as match. So I want to make sure if you have multiple people, go ahead and add their title and their percentages also. Then you're going to hard enter whatever that cost is for the entire year. It will calculate. Same goes for travel and transportation. There are boxes here, description and calculation. Those boxes are to be filled in. Okay, we want to know what it is you're doing and how did you get to that number. A good example of we don't need down to how many pens and pencils you need for office supplies. You can put based on last year's expenses and this year's projections. That's an acceptable calculation description. We're okay with that. As you scroll down, there are different ones here for training. Break it down. Exercise, break down. Equipment, that's where you're going to make sure that you include the authorized equipment list number and the calculation. And then it will automatically total the costs. One of the questions that seems to come up a lot is, do I put my entire budget in here? The only things that you're putting in here, the only costs that you're budgeting for here are the costs that go to support the activity that you included in your work plan. So if you're claiming 100% of your salary, whether it be divvied up among these different categories or 100% in organization, if 100% of your salary is budgeted for, then the work plan activity should cover 100% of your day-to-day activity. Now, I say I want you to do this form first, this worksheet first, because then you can click on Budget Summary, and it will start to summarize what you have in different categories, and it will show you, look over here in these columns E and F, it will show you how much planning is federal and how much planning is match. So it took the total of your expenses that you budgeted for in planning and divided it in half, because that's how you're going to have to build your application cost form. Go one more tab over with me to the EM Grants cost lines. This goes through step by step how you build that cost form. So it shows you that under the costs form exactly what you're going to add in each of these boxes. And not only that, it gives you the dollar amount to enter. So you don't have to do that on a separate spreadsheet. These numbers right here are pulling in from what you entered here. Okay, so use this. It is a tool for your benefit, hopefully. All right, so on the cost line, or on the cost form, back in the system, you're going to click Add Line. You're going to get to choose the area. The area is going to pull in. Remember I said it was important on that introduction page what you select? It's important because it's pulling in not only the work plans, but also what area types you can select from the cost form. So the area is going to be planning. The type, okay, this is where we have to break out EMPG and HMEP. So if you do EMPG, listen to me right now. EMPG is always going to be other. You'll see on that Excel worksheet workbook, I show you right here that you should select other all the time for EMPG. It has nothing to do with what your expenses are. It has everything to do with how the state of Iowa reports the pass-through $2 million to FEMA. It reports it as other. Now, if you're HMEP goes under contractual. So two very distinct differences. EMPG is other. HMEP is going to contractual. It has to do with how we report. EMPG, we report to FEMA. HMEP, we report to DOT. Several of you will be looking at budgets and maybe different salary questions, or maybe your salary might go up in the future or during this grant. It's up to you. I say your application is an estimate. So if you can get a firm number before your application is due, then by all means you can wait. If you have a good feeling of which way it's going to go, you can put in a budget estimate of what you think that salary is going to be. Okay, moving on. So what do you put in the description? If you look over here at this Excel sheet, for a description, you're going to type in federal or match. Okay? So you're going to have one planning other row that's federal. Pre-award, no, That will be no for HMEP and EMPG. No pre-award costs have been approved. Then you're going to click Add Line. For every line under EMPG, you've got 2 lines per category. So you're going to have another planning, other, but this time it's match. This is when I wish I would have just selected one work activity area. Federal, 1. And I don't know if you can tell this, I'm using the Excel sheet over here to get my numbers and to get what I had put, planning, training, exercise, equipment. I guess that doesn't work for this. We'll just go with it. We'll use those dollar amounts. When you guys do this, I'm sure it will work just fine. All right, so after you've looked at this, just double check and make sure that it should say the same 2 work activity or work areas, but the description should be a federal and a match, And then Lisa has something with HMEP.
Now, for those of you that do HMEP, you'll do contractual under the type, and under the description, you need to put the exact project. So if you're doing training, if it's awareness, operations, ops refresher, each line would be a separate project. And then to break out the price, if you know how many classes you plan to have, and if they're $500 a class, you can put in the quantity of the courses, 2 courses at $500 a piece, then that will add up to your $1,000. If you do not know how much those courses will cost for that next grant year, you may put in the quantity of 1 and an estimated price. But when you get down to the objectives, where you explain out those projects, I do need an estimate of how many courses you plan to host for each of those course types. For planning, then it would be a commodity flow study, an ESF 10 update, gap assessment, something of that such. But I do need exact project names, and if you can give me how many.
So that would be an example for HMEP. So when you come down then to funding source, for EMPG initial application, you can say by percent and just do 50% in the federal share, 0 in the state, 50% non-federal, and that'll calculate it automatically. And then you have over here funding source and other agency or other agency. You can just say non-federal fund match. Now when you come down here to accounting codes, EMPG, because several of you have so many, if you're doing supplies and that kind of thing, you can either enter it there, maybe it's as obvious as it's project number 017 and the revenue code is 0017. If it's as simple as that, feel free to enter it in. Otherwise, I want to see attached, and then that will be something that you upload. Same goes for HMEP. All right. For the federal and non-federal share for HMEP, Lisa, what would you like them to do for percentages? 100.
For planning, there will not be a local share requirement, so it would be 100% federal. For training, there is a 20% requirement. So go ahead and split it out by 80-20. Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that works, yes.